Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu, the dust from the lotus feet of pure devotees, Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu, Bhajana Anukul, is favorable for practice of devotional service, the dust. What that means, well, it means both in a literal sense, if you can get the dust from the lotus feet of a great Vaishnava, that's very powerful. If you can get the water which has washed the lotus feet of a great Vaishnava, that's also very powerful. If you can get the remnants of the food of a great Vaishnava, these three things, Mahabal, they're very powerful. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to get the water which had washed his lotus feet was a very rare opportunity, very rare opportunity. There was, when you're entering the Jagannath temple, I haven't personally seen, but it's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita that as he was walking up the steps of the temple, then Mahaprabhu he would wash his feet before going into the temple. And that water would pour down onto the ground. So there was one devotee from Bengal, and actually that was Kala Krishna Das, Jadu Thakur, who had eaten of the remnants of all the Vaishnavas in Bengal. That's an interesting story. One day we can tell the whole story. So he was there washing Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. He's put his hand down. He was taking that water once, twice, three times. Then Mahaprabhu said, "Enough." And he said to Swarab Damodar, take your Bengali Vaishnava, take him away. So the Charana Renu, the dust, and it also means the general proximity and association of the great Vaishnava. Vaishnava Kriya Mudda Vigyatena Bujai, the activities. Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanta, Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanta, the religious principles, they're established by the behavior of the Mahajana, the great Vaishnava. Like Prabhupada, we're studying his life actually. I see many of our enthusiastic students present in the Srila Prabhupada introductory course here this evening in this program. So, this course, actually a few years ago, I thought about this book. There's a book. It's called Prabhupada, Messenger of Godhead. It's a summary of the full Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. There's a summary from this book is there. And I thought, we could, people don't read this book. Actually, when I joined Krishna Consciousness Movement in 1985, at that time, there was no internet. Can you imagine a world without social media? People, how the world has changed so much, even in my lifetime I've seen that nowadays you can have hundreds of friends and they all are made aware of every little thing that you do. Like you went to the market and you saw this, and then you're seeing hundreds of friends. Even I have a Facebook account. I won't tell you what it's called. So I don't want to be invaded. It's just, I think I'm I think I have probably the least amount of friends that you can possibly, I have 8 friends. I said they're just brothers and sisters children. That's it. I just use it for that. And, people, it's people, I travel a lot and I see people, they're there and they have the stick, right? There's a special name for that stick, I think, right? A selfie stick. The language is changing. So even you see in the temple, no selfies. I mean, language has changed. Srila Prabhupada, he invented some words. Prabhupada invented some words like Brahminical. Brahminical. Have you ever thought about that? It's not a Sanskrit word. Another Sanskrit word ending in C-A-L. Brahminical. It's it's an English word and a Sanskrit word combined together. Brahminical, Satvik, Sattvagun is the Sanskrit, Satvik Prasadam, Satvik lifestyle, Brahminical, Brahmacharini, Prabhupada, Brahmacharini ashram. So Prabhupada could invent words. So anyway, the world has changed so much. People in social interaction now, it's a common thing that you can be, particularly with the millennia people, right? Millennia people, they're called, around 20 years old, and you have a conversation with them, and in one hand they have the phone. It's just an accepted phenomenon. They have, and then they're just talking. You're talking to them, and then it's just like a standard behavior. It's actually very rude, rude. But people don't think it is accepted. They're always with their phone. You see, they're traveling and they're there, and they're in the departure lounge, and they're there, like showing everybody. And then you see they're walking down the gangway to get on, and they're there again, like getting closer to the plane. And then look at me, I'm like, it's Maya. It's actually Maya, because it's all about who you want to be, who you project. It's not really you. You don't all the bad things. I'm going to the bathroom. Right? All that's deleted. All the miseries of life we have to deal with. Now I'm paying the money. Look, I'm paying. It's how much money I'm paying. Look. No, all that's deleted. It's only all the things that the synthetic me. Because we're frustrated with the real reality of me and all of the misery I have to experience. So we create the virtual identity. Here I am, all my successes, and the one post after another. That's why it's so popular, because people we're all disappointed with the life that we have. Disappointed with it, but we have no solution. The solution is to leave this place. Make this your last birth. That's the only solution we have. Make this your last birth. Best use of a bad bargain. Make this your last birth. Prepare. I was just thinking, our philosophy. I was taking a walk on Juhu Beach. But Vital, where's Vital? Is Vital here? So we were taking a walk on the beach. I think just because it's a Kirtistan where Prabhupada walked. Prabhupada liked Juhu Beach. I was taking a walk there, and I was getting realization about this verse, Bhagavad Gita, that Yam Yam Vapi Shmaram Bhavam Sajat Ante Kalevaram Tam Tam Ebaiti Kuntaya Yam Yam Vapi, whatever you remember, Yam Yam Vapi Shmaram Bhavam. Krishna is giving this most important instruction, but it's so extraordinary that hardly people know about this. It should be the main subject of education in the college. But no people know the science of preparing for your next birth. Even people in India, they don't know about this. The country I'm from, the people, they don't even know that there's another birth. That's a debate, what happens after death. Man, that's how devoid of knowledge people are in the Western countries. It's a topic of debate. Is there life after death? What happens after death? People, they're so far away from the Bhagavad Tattva, from the truth of reality. At least in people in India, most people, they know that you have another life, but they don't know the key. That yam yam vapi shmaram bhavam. Whatever yam yam vapi shmaram bhavam. Shmaram bhavam means a consciousness. Shmaram bhavam, you're remembering the consciousness. Consciousness is an interesting topic. It's not exactly the intellect. It's not exactly the memory. It's everything combined together. The consciousness. It's your It's not exactly your thoughts, but generally we say your thoughts. But your consciousness is really it also includes the personality that you have become, that you have developed as a result of your life, your consciousness. It includes all of these things, your desires, your style, your likes, and your consciousness. So, yam yam vapi shmaram bhavam, that consciousness that you remember, shmaram bhavam, tajet ante. Tajet means giving up the body. Ante kalevaram. Ante, the final kalevaram, body, giving up the body. Tajet ante kalevaram. Give up the body. Leave this body. We're going to leave the body. Leave the body. So then the consciousness at the time of leaving, yam yam vapi shmaram, tajet ante kalevaram. Yeah, tum tum. You know this little bit of Sanskrit grammar here. Yum yum tum tum. Yum yum tum tum. Yum yum tum tum means that which, so which. That which, so yum yum vapi smaram, what you're remembering, tum tum. That same, tum tum. Evaiti, certainly, kundeya. Sada tad bhava bhavita. Even those two words, so useful. Tad bhava bhavita. Tad bhava bhavita. You become that bhav. Tad bhava bhavita. That consciousness, you become. Your next life begins from that point, that consciousness. Now, isn't that important? Isn't that important? But who knows this science? Who knows this science? That the state of consciousness in the final moment, the final breath, antakal, the final, that tad bhava bhavitaha, you become. You become. So if you're intelligent, you'll take advantage of the human form of life to make the most ideal consciousness that solves all the problems. We're so busy, we're victimized, we're suffering because of so many problems that never cease to come as a result of being in this body. They're just unlimited. They're just one after another. There's so many problems that we become accustomed to them. I remember that we used to travel on the train in India many years ago. Nowadays we don't, sometimes take a train ride. And in those days, I remember I used to go from Kolkata to Delhi on the train, the Purva Express, and the Kalka Mail, Kolkata to Delhi. And in Harrow Station, you'd be sitting in the compartment, the window open, sitting in the compartment. And then you see the guys coming and they've got all these different types of chains around their neck and locks, and they're there, ching, 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 ching. All the people, for dinner, bring a chain. They're buying a chain to lock up their luggage. And even under the chair, there's a little thing to lock up the luggage. Huh? So you may remember in the days when you used to travel on trains. I know you're all aristocrats and you fly Indigo now. But in the days when you were traveling on the trains, then you would sleep. And sleeper, you sleep. Now, I remember, you can reflect on your own experience, but it's not so easy to sleep on the train, actually, the noise and people. So you would be sleeping and I'd be on the upper berth. I used to like the side berth upper, although they're a little shorter, actually. Side berth upper, but it was a little less, than the people were all crammed in there on the other three berths. And then you'd have maybe you'd have a big bag, you'd have it locked up down, but the other bags, handbag, check the handbag. And you kind of had it under your feet. There was nowhere else to put it. So you'd be there and it'd be resting, like squeezed in beside you. Is it not? Have you had such an experience? Okay. And then you're sleeping on the train, and then when you wake up, what's the first thing you do? I can write down the answer. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? What's the first thought that crosses your mind? My luggage. It's like, so what does that mean? Actually, that means that we're always in anxiety about having the luggage stolen. We're always in anxiety, but we become accustomed to it. And we just we become, that's a normal state of mind, but we've become accustomed to it. So we don't we're not so disturbed by it, but we're always in anxiety. So at that time when you're coming from the subconscious to the conscious, you kind of go through that level, and it's like when you start up your gadget and all of the programs running in the background, they automatically, what is it called? They automatically activate, right? Activate. What's the word? It starts running. We have to use all the analogy that people can relate to. Background programs running in the background start up. So they all start up. Even when you open the thing, they all start up and they all pop up. So like that, they're running all the time. And so when you're coming into consciousness then all of those programs that are always running in the background, then they kind of like they interface, they come across you notice them starting up. You get my point here? It's at that time that you register, I'm thinking about the luggage, but always we're worried about it. But we become accustomed to that. Actually, we become accustomed to suffering. And that's called Nitai na bolilo mukhe majilo shangsha shuke. We don't think it's suffering. We don't think it's suffering. Or people, you purchase a new vehicle. Let's say you purchase a new vehicle. So people like worshipping, they do worship. And then it's like they're showing everybody, because in India people keep the plastic on the seats for a long time. I don't know about with Maharashtra, but in Bengal, we used to live in Bengal, Bangladesh. On the fridge, there's a lock. Maharashtra, there's locks on the fridge. Get back, my food. I have the key. No one gets in without my permission. Yeah, the kids are there scratching on the door. Get back. It's all locked up. Locks on the fridge. So you buy even a fridge, same thing. It's because we're suffering, because things will just rot and go off. And a new fridge, and they're there, so many drawers, so many containers for fruits and vegetables, big freezer. So it's actually because we're suffering. We're in a suffering condition. You have to have a fridge. You have to spend some of the AC, they have the advertisements, AC, so quiet, it's so nice, so many buttons, AC, but we're suffering. It's our suffering. And this is, we think, enjoyment. You buy a new car and we're there and it's like, wow, they have advertisements, motorbike, motorcycle, well, you're enjoying. Why? But why you have to go here and there? Why you have to go here and there? Why can't you just stay in one place? No, but we're forced to go. You have to go here for this, you have to go here for that. It's trouble. It's trouble. It's all suffering. But people become accustomed to the suffering. And we think it's okay. Come on, Achen, hello, Achen. So, let's go back to Charana Shidhu. Let's go back to Bhakta Sheva. Yeah, so Charana, how's it start? Bhakta Shuddha Bhakta. Charana Rena. Bhajana Anuku, association. Getting close to the lotus feet, getting close to their behavior. We're talking about the Prabhupada course. Yeah, so I was thinking a few years ago, that's where I got 85. I joined the movement. There was no internet. That's where we were. There was no internet. And so nowadays it's all different. People, they don't read books. It's just they read posts. They don't read books. There's so much there's even devotees. There's lectures. There's so many lectures on YouTube. And actually, my wife, she listens to, she says to me, she's a simple lady, a very simple lady. And she says to me how, they just come one after another. So like YouTube, she said, they just one after another. All the lectures, they come one after another. You understand? But it's like we're all programmed. We're all under surveillance. And all of the things we like, it just pops up. She says to me, it just comes one after another. YouTube. There was no internet. And we had, people would read the books. We'd read the books in the back of the temple, and every temple in ISKCON there was a bookshelf. That you would get it when you purchased the books, the wooden bookshelf. It came from the BBT. You'd get it when you purchased the books. And the Bhagavatam was there, and then there was a section for Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then there was another section for some of the other hard books, like teachings of Queen Kunti was there, Science of Self-Realization, and maybe a few of the other, like Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, hardback books, and the bookshelf was just the right size. And then the Lila Amrita, the 6 volumes of Srila Prabhupada Lila Amrita, and that was in the section of the bookcase. And that was in every ISKCON temple. And basically they were the books that we read. Devotees weren't, desktop publishing. The devotees weren't producing books like they do now. You can write a book, process word processors. Even Prabhupada, when he published his books and had them published in Delhi, that was a great credit. And when Prabhupada came to the West, he had his published book. He was a published author. That's a remarkable achievement. Not like now, people you can just publish books. You can just, everything you can do yourself. Make movies. I mean, what are they called? Influencers and bloggers. They're just guys sitting around, ladies, guys and girls are sitting around at home. Even they have the news. The news are private people. And they're there and they were like reporting on the news. Everything's changed so much. So we didn't have those things. We had the books, and then we'd read the books. We're all supposed to read a minimum 1 hour a day. That was usually the 1 hour a day, as well as attending the class, read for 1 hour a day. And I remember Korma Prabhu, who I was very fortunate to have his association. Perhaps you don't know Korma. Who knows? Who's heard of Korma? Oh, not many of you. No. So he was a famous cook. And in the old days when there was Back to Godhead magazine, it was like a thinner one, and it used to come out every month, actually. Back to Godhead, they come out every month. And devotees, we preach from Back to Godhead. Also in the bookshelf, there was a folder with Back to Godhead magazines. Remember that as well, you get. And so Korma, he would be there in almost every edition of Back to Godhead with a recipe. When I first met him, he was a brahmachari in temple. He'd cook for Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, when Prabhupada was eating the puris, it was in Melbourne, when Prabhupada was eating the puris, he said that the devotee who's cooked these puris is following my instructions perfectly. Or else he may have said he's following the principles perfectly. Prabhupada said that when he was eating the puris. So he was such a special devotee, Korma. And I was a student. I'll tell you a little bit about Korma. Because it's late at night, I think it's good to keep the topics light. I was a student in the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. And we were living with other students. It was that bohemian type of lifestyle. And we had the Food for Life. It was like Food for Life. It was kind of a mix between Food for Life and a restaurant. It was a budget restaurant. So you could get the lunch there, the full lunch, rice, sabji, halwa, every day for $1 or $2. And even they'd give it, we wouldn't have to pay. It was like that. So I was going there every day, taking prasadam there every day. And I was going to college. I'd managed to, I hope people who are at college here don't get all confused after I say this. But I'd managed to get through the morning classes. And then I'd go to Crossways. The place is called Crossways. I'd go to Crossways. And I'd take prasadam. And I'd eat so much sabji, rice, halwa. I didn't know that the halwa was meant to be like a sweet after I just take them all, mixed it all together, So I still remember the taste. It was great. And then afterwards, after I take prasadam, they had a lounge upstairs with cushions and a TV. In those days, they were big, these things like a DVD. It was like a big thing like this. Nothing like on your phone nowadays. You're enjoying so much, you don't realize how life is so easy. Everything on your phone. In those days, a big DVD thing, and you put the thing in, clunk, clunk, clunk. And they'd show, like, you could see they were showing Prabhupada videos in the lounge, like in the Juhu, in the restaurant, they have the big DVD screen there, Prabhupada videos, so like that, but it was on the TV, and I'd just lie on the cushions. That was it. I couldn't make it back to college in the afternoon. I just, the halva and everything, I just lie on the cushions and watch the Prabhupada videos. And I was there one day, I was going in one day, and then I see a sign on there's a little notice board there where we lined up for the prasadam. There's a sign on the notice board. And it said, students from Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology needed, to help us with the vegetarian club. I saw the sign there. It kind of like, it was, I guess you could say, haunting me. The sign, I felt that I can't keep my mouth shut. I just felt like that. It's probably something, there was some grain of piety somewhere in my past. Some grain of piety. It was all black and bad. I won't go into details describing the family background I came from. They were Irish people, Irish people. I mean, the Irish priests, they come and they just drink. In any program, they'll drink, the Irish people. They drink and fight and dance, sing songs. The Irish people. So we were from that background, and but somehow there was some level of piety. I mean, there's some concept of personality in Catholic concept. Like there was pictures, there was sort of murtis in the church. There were like deities of Joseph and Mary. You've seen those, Mary, and there was a nativity at Christmas. They'd have the cows. And what's it called, the barn where Jesus was born, in the like they make a little altar, actually, a little altar. Not all in Christianity do that, but the Catholics do that, but not all of them. In many of the Christian, they don't even put the form of Jesus on the cross. They just have a cross. But in the Catholic, they have like the form of Jesus is there, and they had the paintings. They were original paintings. They were oil paintings in the church of it's called Stations of the Cross, the crucifixion and everything. So, and there were statues in the church, and there was holy water. So there was a lot of things here that that had like a bit of a Vedic feel to them, like Charan and Rita sort of a thing, and the holy water and the pictures, the form. I mean, it was a form. It was personality, Jesus' personality. Even there, Prasad Sheba. How we're going to keep your attention now? We were there at Rath Yatra, Kolkata, and we were speaking. The Bengali people, they get a kick out of it when they hear the foreigner speaking Bengali. It was like they enjoyed that. So we were giving the lecture, and then the prasadam, the prasadam was at 2:00. But you could hear them bringing the prasadam in in the hall at 1:30, and like putting and then people they stand in the line. Halfway through the lecture, all the people are standing in the line already. So we're talking about the images in Christianity, the images. And there was even one picture there, and they had the picture, and there was Jesus in the heart. There's a picture there, and Jesus is in the heart there. Maybe you've seen these pictures around. He's in the heart there. So all of these things, they're a little bit related to the Vedic concept of the personality of Godhead. So maybe because of that background, we had some sort of little bit of piety there. So for somehow this sign that was students from RMIT, we need contact the management. I couldn't, I felt that I can't just ignore that. I felt that I can't, how could I be so shameful? That here I'm coming every day and taking the meal and enjoying and relaxing, and now they're asking, and am I sneaky such a person that I will just pretend I didn't see that sign and ignore it? I just couldn't do that somehow. And so I said, I went up to the counter and I said, I saw the sign there, students from RMIT. So I'm from RMIT, And then, so they went and they told Korma. Korma he was cooking, the Prabhupada disciple, was empowered. He's like special devotee. One time, Prabhupada was there in Melbourne. He was going to the Melbourne Town Hall. You can see the video of that lecture there. And all the devotees had gone. And Korma was doing the arti. So the deities that Prabhupada had installed, Radha Krishna deities, Korma was there doing the arti. And no one else was in the temple. Everyone had gone to the program. And they were waiting. They were taking Prabhupada later after everything had been set up. And Korma's there doing the arti, and he's singing the Gaur arti. You know, Jayo Jaya Gaura Chandra, as he's doing the arti. And Prabhupada came in to take darshan. And Korma didn't know that Prabhupada was there taking darshan. He was just doing the arti and singing. And then Prabhupada turned to his servant and he said, Korma Dev. So Korma comes out. And I said, yeah, I'm from RMIT. And then he said, well, we're going to start a vegetarian club in the campus. And we will come every week and distribute prasadam. That's what the club, because those of you students, you know, there's student clubs. Pranjal, you have student clubs in your college? Okay, student clubs, different hobbies and stuff. Students have clubs, you know. So make a club, and this club will be, they call it the Vegetarian Club. And then every week we'll come and with prasadam in containers, you arrange the room and we'll distribute the prasadam. Actually, many devotees were made from that preaching program. And they did it in Melbourne University and they did it in the college I was in as well. So they made a lot of devotees who subsequently became leaders in ISKCON, like Nrsimha Kavacha Prabhu and Prana Prabhu. I don't know if any of you knew Prana Prabhu. He left his body in Vrindavan a couple of years ago. He was into education. He also came from that college preaching program. So Korma says, we need someone from RMIT to organize the club. Like you have to be like a president and a secretary, and you know, so find a few other students and organize the club. And you don't have to do anything else. You just have to register the club and then we will come and do everything. You know, but we can't do that without the students registering the club. So Korma says to me, so you can arrange, you go and register the club and get a few other people to be on the executive members, and that's all you have to do. And I'm thinking, oh, these Hare Krishna people, you know, they got so much money. I'm thinking, they got so much money that I said, oh, you mean I'll probably have to make a few phone calls? And he said, however you do it. And I said, well, maybe you could give some money and, you know, for the phone calls. And he looked at me and he said, Krishna will help you. And I thought, hang on, that's not fair. I don't even believe in Krishna. Right? Krishna will help you. He looked at me. I still remember the look on his face. He's so convinced that Krishna exists. Krishna will help you. So anyway, as it turned out, in the college where I was studying, there was a studio there. It was a shared studio. We were in the first year. In the subsequent years, we had private studio. But in the first year, we were all students sharing the studio. And there was a little room in the corner, and there was a phone. The phone. So Krishna did help me. You know? I rang a few people, and I got the club together. I was the president. Got someone else to be the secretary, someone else to be the treasurer. And then we went to the student council, and I said, we want to open a club. No, club. Vegetarian club. Okay, you can have this room. We want to have a meeting once a week. And I said, we'll distribute, we'll have vegetarian Hare Krishna food. And I said, you do whatever you want to do, man. In your club, you can do. So then I went, I told Korma, yeah, you come, and what day? Tuesday at that time, you know. So there you go. I started doing that. And then after that, actually, my material life, everything changed, actually. Everything changed in my life. It was just like, I had all of the obstacles, or everything just opened up to lead me into Krishna consciousness. It was so easy to take to Krishna consciousness after doing that seva. Seva. It was seva because Bhakata Seva, we're singing the song. I knew there would be a connection here somewhere. Bhakata Seva, Paramasiddhi. And ultimately the highest seva is to do preaching work. Because Mahaprabhu, Kali Juga, Juga Dharma, Name Prochar, Toti Lage Pita Varna Chaitanya Avatar. He's appeared, Chaitanya Avatar, in this age for Name Prochar, to preach. Because I was not actually interested in spirituality. I wasn't interested in spirituality. I wasn't like thinking that where is, the higher truths or anything. I wasn't really thinking like that, but I was just reclaimed by the devotees. They just the efforts they put in, it had an effect on me. But I wasn't a person who was looking for spiritual life. I wasn't particularly interested. I had all other plans about enjoying in this world. But they all evaporated. And the devotees, I would go to that restaurant and I would take prasadam. And there was a devotee, he would sit next to me and he would just talk to me the whole time. I thought, this is not fair. You should be eating, but you're just talking. And he'd tell me about Vrindavan. I had no idea about anything. He'd tell me about Vrindavan. He'd lived in Vrindavan as a pujari for a couple of years. And he'd just talk to me about Vrindavan and all this stuff. Vrindavan. And the devotees would say to me, they'd say that no matter what success you have in this life, you can be successful, but you'll still grow old, get diseased, and die and lose it all. And they said that, and I couldn't deny it. They said that, and what could I say? And they spoiled everything for me. They spoiled everything. And then after that, I just had the attraction after I did that thing with the vegetarian club, the attraction, I just became attracted to devotees, to being with devotees, to doing some seva, to going to the temple. Everything about the temple attracted me. The bhajan, the sound of the mridanga. I remember after that I went to Tasmania, and also I'm telling you about Melbourne. I'm from Melbourne, and Prabhupada visited Melbourne 5 times. His rooms are there. It was Tirthastan. Melbourne was blessed. Prabhupada danced on the streets of Melbourne, and he gave programs in the Melbourne Town Hall. He purified that place. So we got purified as a result of that. I went to Tasmania, and there was a center there, a small center. There was a family there, a devotee, his wife. He was a Prabhupada disciple. His wife, their daughter. The daughter's name was Goldavani. And there was one brahmachari. He was also a Prabhupada disciple. They're all still in the movement in Australia. And that brahmachari would play the mridanga in the kirtan. Play the mridanga. It was a clay mridanga, and he'd play the mridanga. And I used to hear that mridanga, and I used to think, my God, that is amazing. How he can do that. The beats and everything. I'm thinking he must have studied for years and years to be able to do that. The halaj, the big one, the woman, the little one, and the different songs. They actually had bhajan night as well. They had bhajan night. They sing bhajan. They play mridanga. And then there was Jai Radha Madhava, and he wouldn't sing. The other devotee would sing, and he'd play the mridanga. And then with the kirtan standing up, and he'd be playing the mridanga. And I'm thinking he must have gone to some teacher and trained for years to be able to. Because I thought that every song was a different. You're playing all the different. I thought every song had its own mridanga. It was only after I joined the movement. And I lived in the temple for a few months and started, learning a little bit about Madanga, that I learned that there's only 3 beats. And you play them in every song. It fits in every song. But I was thinking, wow, this how he's there. He must be studying for years, So then, we become more and more attracted. Doing that seva I was so attracted to everything about the devotees, the dress of the devotees, the language of the devotees, the material world, fried, and all of these things. Devotees would say, spaced out, all of these things devotees would say. And going back to Godhead, one devotee was saying to me, the spiritual master he wants you to go back home more than you want yourself. I'm thinking, just go home. What's the big deal? Wants to go back home. Spiritual master really wants you to go back home. Why not just go home? So all of the things, the devotees, the devotees. I mean, those days, actually, there was the Indian expatriates. Hardly the immigration changed a lot. It's like hundreds of thousands of expatriate Indians in Australia. Now, in those days, there wasn't. When I joined the temple, actually, there were no Indian people coming to the temple. It was all people, like from Melbourne, people, Australian people. So it was very, the whole lifestyle. And we went to the farm. They had a farm, growing things on the farm. And so everything became so attractive in Krishna consciousness as a result of doing that seva and helping with serving the preaching, contributing toward the preaching. I did something and the devotees that helped with the preaching. And it just removes so much of the layers and layers of illusion which prevent us from making the right decisions. The influence of the material energy, asat sangha, we can't think straight. So all of that was like just lifted off me. And I could see things much clearer as a result of doing that seva. And we became so attracted to Krishna consciousness as a result of that little bit of seva. So Korma, he was such a special devotee, Korma. I was telling you about Korma. I was so fortunate to join the temple and he was the head pujari. He was the head pujari. I was telling you last night about Melbourne is like Juhu, the 3 altars, and he was the head pujari, and he was such a devotee. He had so much love for Prabhupada, so much love for the deities, and he would do kirtan. He was such an expert kirtaniya. He had such a voice. He was such an artist, Korma. I mean, he was a cook, famous cook. He used to cook amazing, and he was so creative. And he'd do the kirtan, and he'd sing these tunes. He'd sing all Vyasiki tunes, Vyasiki tunes. And then he'd be there in the middle, and then he'd break into Gauda, 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 Hari, Gauda. It's just like so transcendental. In those days, he would cook the Sunday feast, and then he would do the kirtan and give the lecture. So I remember one time there was a Kodasi. He would cook the Sunday feast, and you'd see him in the morning at 3:00. He'd be chanting his rounds outside in the courtyard. Chanting his rounds. He finished his rounds and he'd be in the kitchen during Mangalati. In the kitchen. And then, he'd come into the temple room after Mangalati and we're all sitting there chanting japa. And he'd come into the temple room with the apron, and he had a clipboard with all the items that he'd planned to cook in the feast that day, like 15 items. And he'd come into the temple room. And then that was it. You had to stop chanting your japa and go into the kitchen. But it was so ecstatic. It was so, the way he was so, you become influenced, you become affected, you become intoxicated by his attachment. And the way the items, like each item, it would have so many steps to make you'd be doing something, you wouldn't really know what the final product was going to be. You wouldn't know what the final product was going to be. And then all of a sudden you'd say, this is a kofta bowl. He'd first of all say, go to the cool room, get 3 bags of cabbages and bring them. What's this? And then chop them up. And then we'd make the Simply Wonderful bowls. Simply Wonderful with milk powder. Simply Wonderful, right? Milk powder and sugar and some sultanas, and he'd show you how to roll them, and you'd roll them, and you'd stack them on this tray, and then he'd come and he'd look, and then if it wasn't the right size, he'd be there and he'd go flick, flick, flick it back into the big container, have to do it again. He taught me how to cook sweet rice. This is probably interesting to you. I mean, he taught me how to cook some items. He taught me how to cook sweet rice in a big, like a pot this big. I mean, there's nothing for you guys. You cook such bigger scales. But a big pot, sweet rice. And, you're boiling the milk and you have to keep stirring it. If you stop for a moment, it'll burn. And then you can taste it in the sweet rice that it's burnt, everything's spoiled. And he'd be there, and he'd go, stir more, and then the steam's coming up, the heat, and you're there, and you're like, and he's there, and he'd go from one item to the other. It was so intense. One time we cooked the Ekadasi feast. Ekadasi, it was Sunday, it was Ekadasi. And the whole feast was Ekadasi. And it was just myself, Kumar Prabhu, myself, and another brahmachari, the three of us. We cooked the whole feast. He had us there from 5 a.m. And it was so intense and so wonderful. And then the offering to the deity was at, I think it was 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, make the offering. There were three plates. The plates were about as big as this table, actually, the plate, the silver plate. Same as Juhu, I'm saying, same as Juhu, huge plate, all the offerings. And Prabhupada Cormac told us that Prabhupada said, Krishna is like a 16-year-old boy in terms of his appetite. And it was like a 16-year-old boy, like he can eat a lot. So every plate was packed full with puri. I mean, this was a Ekadasi feast, but they had those Ekadasi puris. And I still remember we each had the three plates. And then we carry the plates from the kitchen to the altar room, and the pujari's in there, and the pujari opens the door. He'd hand the plates in. So we each had a plate, the three of us. And Kum was carrying the plate. I think he was carrying on his head, carrying the plate. And then it opens the door, we put ours in, and then Kum hands his plate into the pujari. And he walks back, and he falls on the ground. He falls on the ground. Dandavat, pranam. He falls on the ground. And I heard him utter. I could hear him say, Gauranga, Sri Gauranga, please accept this offering. And one time we were cooking sweet rice. He cooked a sweet rice. It was a big feast. He'd do things like days in advance. He'd prepare stuff. So he cooked the sweet rice. And it was in the cool room. It was cool. And then he said to me, Atul, bring the sweet rice from the cool room. And get another devotee. It's in a big pot. It's in a big pot. And he said, be careful, because the pot, it has a broken handle. So, a pot like this, and it only has one handle on it, and the other is no handle. And he said, be careful, because the pot's broken, it only has one handle. I said, yes, Prabhu, yes, Prabhu, yes, Prabhu. So we're carrying, actually he cooked it and it was under the stove, and then he said, taking it out. And the kitchen had these steps, boom, 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 like this, steps going down into the car park area and then out in the cool room. And he said, take the sweet rice and put it in the cool room, and you get this bhakta, and you two of you take it. He said to me, be careful, because the handle on the pot is broken. Be careful. Yes, Prabhu, I'll be careful. So I'm holding the handle, and then the other devotee, he was younger than me, he was junior, so he had to hold the side without the handle. And then we get to the steps, and I'm going first. I remember I'm walking down the steps backwards, and that devotee, he's walking down frontwards, and he's holding the thing. And we go down one step, and 2 steps, and I'm looking, and then it was like my whole world, it went into slow motion. In slow motion. As I see the pot slip from the hand of that devotee, we're on the 2nd step, and I see the pot just slip from his hand, and everything was like slow motion. As I see the pot, it falls just about 6 inches, that's all it took. For 6 and hits on the step, the pot hits on the step, and I'm looking, and then a slight delay, and then the reaction, the physics of it, every action has a reaction. It goes bang on the step, and then what? And then this wave of sweet rice just goes and just splash all over the stairs, And then, we've got to go and say to Korma, we dropped the sweet rice. That devotee, that younger devotee, he ran away. He just ran out the car park. He couldn't, face her. He couldn't face it. And I had to go back and look for him, and he looks at me. I said, come on, we got the street rice. I still remember that moment. He was so angry. He'd cooked that street rice. He'd stayed up like middle of the night cooking that street rice. He said, go to the market, buy the milk, and come back, and make the whole thing again. When I first joined the temple, I remember I didn't go outside the gate for first 6 months. Didn't go outside the gate of the temple for the first 6 months. I was just like, took complete shelter of the temple and temple services. They had the roster, different services, and like cleaning the prasadam hall, cleaning the temple hall, cleaning the kitchen, cleaning the bathrooms. My name was just on everything. My name was on everything. Actually, I remember that before I was in the temple, I was in the college. I had a job. I had a part-time job in a restaurant. It was a vegetarian restaurant. And it was cleaning. It was, like what they call a kitchen hand. Like part-time work. In foreign countries, you can make a lot of money just as a kitchen hand. So I was doing the work. And I did everything that the boss told me to do. I did everything he told me to do. And there was another employee there, a lady. She was a little older. And she did everything that the boss said, but she did extra stuff. And the boss didn't even say to do it, but she would do it. But I didn't do that because whatever he told me to do, I'd do that and that'd be it. I finished. And then one day I front up at work and he says, "Oh, we don't need you anymore." And he said, "We have enough, this lady here." And I thought, wow, I did everything I had to, but I still lost the job. And then I thought, when I came to Krishna consciousness, I thought that, I'm going to do as much as I can. I'm going to do as much as I can because that will be pleasing to Krishna. Just like I thought that lady, whatever she did, it was noticed by the boss. And I was, but that lady, it was noticed. And I thought it's like that. It's a personal thing. So let me do more. Let me do more. Let me do more savor and try and do it really nicely. Really nicely. So although those temple duties, I did them really, I tried to really do them like with perfection. Cleaning the temple room, cleaning the prasadam room, and because I was afraid of the material world, actually. I was afraid of having to fall back into the material world. So that was a good thing. So then the service I had was, the kitchen, cleaning the kitchen also meant that the Lord's plates, after the bhoga is offered, the prasadam, those plates, the washing the Lord's plates, that was done by the kitchen cleaner. So then when the offering is done, the pujari, they put the plates, there was a big lid. It was like, you couldn't go anywhere near that. It was like, no way. It was, those plates, you couldn't, people, devotees all walking around, but no one could touch those plates. It was like forbidden. They'd be on the tray there, and then the kitchen cleaner would come, one plate after another, you'd take back into the kitchen, and into the little deity kitchen, and you'd lock the door, and then you'd have to wash all the plates, because the rule was that the prasadam cannot be taken out for distribution until all of the plates, the Lord's plates, are washed. Maybe that's in Juhu, maybe that's a standard like that, but all of the Lord's plates have to be washed before anyone would ever consider honoring any of that prasadam. It's part of the steps of the worship. So then you'd wash all the plates. Now, in those days, the prasadam, we had the brahmacharis, we had the brahmacharinis. So they'd take prasadam in one room, the brahmachari, one room, the brahmacharinis. So then the plate cleaner, they'd give you these plastic trays. And in the plastic trays, there was little containers. They were used ice cream. Comes in like a plastic tub with a plastic lid. So they'd all fit. They just perfectly fit. There was like 6 of them. And they'd perfectly fit into this larger plastic tray. And they gave us 2 of those. One goes to the ladies' room, prasadam. One goes to the men's room, prasadam. And then so this is all the responsibility of the plate cleaner. You had to fill up the 2. Now, when I was at school, I was good at arts, English literature, and poetry, and the drawing class. I was good at that. The mathematics class, wasn't one of my strong mathematics. So here I'm sitting in there and there's 2 trays I have to fill up, and there's 3 plates of prasadam. So it was a complex problem for me. You know, how 3 plates into 2 to divide into 2. 3 plates divide into 2. Mathematics wasn't a strong subject for me. So what was my conclusion? 1 plate for the men, 1 plate for the ladies, 1 plate for the plate cleaner. And so I lived off the Mahaprasadam exclusively for the first 6 months of my life in the temple, lived off the Mahaprasadam. And I remember the devotees, they would take prasadam because you had to do other services in the kitchen before you'd take prasadam. And so I'd take prasadam, mostly all the devotees already finished prasadam. And then I'd come in with my plate prasadam. And then there were quite a crowd would stand around and watch to see the huge pile of prasadam that I would honor. It was quite a phenomena which attracted many devotees to witness that every day when we would honor so much Mahaprasad. Of course, they were the young days. I joined the movement when I was 21 years old, 40 years ago, and we could consume a lot of prasadam in those days. And as the Upanishad literature explains, that tena tat tena bunjita, ma'agridha kashuja, one can accept only one's quota. So I think that I used up a lot of this life's quota. I used a lot of that up in the early years, and for that reason now I only can take a little bit of prasadam. So these are some thoughts tonight. We got as far as Bhakata Seva Paramasiddhi. Any questions tonight? Yes. Well, prasadam is such that however you take it, you're going to be benefited. Even we distribute prasadam and people, they don't even know what is prasadam. They don't know that this is offered. They don't know that. But still that prasadam is very powerful. However, if you have devotional consciousness when you're taking prasadam, then naturally the effect is even more purified. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, prasadam is so much emphasized by Kaviraj Goswami that he goes into great detail to describe all of the items that are offered in many occasions, many extensive sections of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Like when Mahaprabhu arrived in Shantipur after taking sannyas, and Shita Thakurani, the wife of Advaita Acharya, she'd prepared so many items. When Mahaprabhu saw that prasadam, he said, Ache Jai Anna Krishna Ke Karaya Bojon, Janme Janme Shide Dhara Taha Choron. That one who can cook such items for Lord Krishna, Janme Janme, life after life, Shire on my head, Dhora Taha Choron, I take their feet on my head life after life. Mahaprabhu said that, seeing the items. He was so much impressed. In Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu, they would place the prasadam. Mahaprabhu would circumambulate the prasadam and pay obeisances to the prasadam. So these are indicating that Shavabhama Bhattacharya, he would offer the prasadam. The way the prasadam is honored, the way the prasadam is served, all of these they enhance the effect of honoring that prasadam. The way the prasadam is served. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was serving Mahaprabhu, and he said that you kindly honor the prasadam just as Lord Jagannath has enjoyed it today. So that's the ideal consciousness, that it's called prasad sheba. Prasad, we sang in the song, prasad sheba kodite hoy shakala prapancha jai. That you can cross over all the influence of the material energy just by prasad seva, just by honoring the prasad. Honor, we say honor prasadam. Honor prasadam. So if you have the consciousness that I'm tasting the prasadam, actually we have a course. I was discussing with Narottam today about different courses we could offer. So one of them is a Vaishnava culture course, and it includes about prasadam, and we have many pastimes from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and an exercise where devotees, they explore the different tips, different instructions on taking prasadam, like sitting down to take prasadam, sitting down. I mean, I like to sit on the ground to take prasadam. Those boys, they'll say that I don't sit at the table. Of course, we're invited to people's homes. It's a little inconvenient for them. They have a table, so we take on the table. But I prefer to sit on the floor to take prasadam. For me, it's much more comfortable, and I like to take prasadam like that, sitting on the floor. And Prabhupada actually preferred that the devotees, they sit on the floor in lines, and the prasadam is carried in containers and served. You've taken prasadam in this way. And the items come, and then again and again, and if you want more, it comes again several times, like that. That's the first class way to honor prasadam. In our leadership sangha in ISKCON, leadership sanghas, they don't do that. They have the prasadam is from 1:30 to 3:30, and you can go when convenient for you, and you line up and you say a bit of this, a bit of that, and a bit of this. There's people they're serving, but that's a different style. You know that style? It's called Bay Maria. It's all lined up, and then you're like in the restaurant, and you go and with your plate and say, yeah, a bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then they're going to sit at the table. And our leadership sangha, that's how it's always done, because the leaders, they're older and they can't sit down on the floor. But Prabhupada Prabhupada sat at his table, or had a special table, but he would sit on the floor. And in Mayapur, there's the table where Prabhupada would sit on the floor, and in Juhu, there's a table like that. I would sit on. In Melbourne, there was a table. Prabhupada would sit on the floor. So like that, the way you sit, the consciousness. I mean, for me, prasadam. I mean, I live at home. I have a wife. She's very Brahminical. We worship Shalagram Shila. I take bath in Ganga. I come back. I offer the bhog. I sit on the floor. It is very, it works good. We're a good team in that way. So the way you take prasadam, if it's kind of just like out the door, rushing, grab it, okay, prasadam. But if it's done, you share it, you take bath. I mean, I live in Mayapur, take Ganga Snan, take bath, tilak, make the offering, worship the deity, sit down, take prasad. It's very purifying, very same time every day. It makes a big effect, it has a big effect on the conscience. Usually that's all I eat. I don't snack. I'm not the snack type person. I know devotees, we go on parikrama in the bus, and then as soon as you sit down, they start the bus. There's one snack after another. Prabhu this, Prabhu that, like snacks. Snacks, I take it once a day or twice a day. That's it. And in between, no. I'm not the snack type person. Snacks, just a Prabhu snacks. Of course, if someone offers you prasadam, they're from a distant place, something like that, particularly Jagannath prasadam, you have to honor it on the spot. But that's also whether you're hungry or not. That's seva, that you praptam anam dhrutam shishtai, bhaktavyam harir abravit, na desha niyamas tatra, na kala niyamas tatra. Na desha, no place consideration, na kala, no time consideration. As soon as someone gives you that prasadam, particularly if it's Jagannath Mahaprasad, you have to honor it on the spot. Not necessarily everything, but you have to take a little bit on the spot. That's it. But in general, I'm at the prasadam time, I sit and I take prasadam, and then I'm not like snacks here and there, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So these are things about you were talking about the way you're eating the prasadam. Yeah. Well, certainly it requires a lot of, you have to be advanced in consciousness. I mean, it's a little bit private, that type of prasadam, a little bit private, taking the remnants of a devotee. Certainly it's a humbling act, and but you understand that by taking those remnants, like Narad Muni, he took the remnants of the Bhakti Vedantas, and then it describes that their qualities, he developed their qualities. So this is the effect of taking the remnants of the plate from the Vaishnava, that you develop their qualities. You develop their qualities in other ways also, by being with them, by serving them, by associating, by serving them prashana. There's close association. You will develop the qualities that they have. That's the nature of association. And particularly eating the remnants of the food, you develop the qualities. So that should be the consciousness. That you develop the qualities, the compassion, and other qualities that the great Vaishnavas have, the determination, and the broad vision, and the soft-heartedness, and the devotion. So all of those qualities can be acquired by taking the remnants. Anything else this evening? Yeah. Yeah, seems to be. Seems to be. I mean, if you interested, you can do research. Prabhupada is not the only philosopher that used the term Godhead. At that time, when Prabhupada was writing, you can do the research and find out others were also using the term Godhead. So Prabhupada selected that word to describe the personality of Godhead. But you can understand it like that, or that has unlimited forms. So Godhead,